A barrage of Cambodian rocket fire is launched into neighboring Thailand. Phnom Penh says its troops were acting in self-defense to what it calls an unprovoked assault. Bangkok says Cambodia instigated the attacks and its armed forces retaliated. There was panic in Thai villages as people fled to bunkers. With many people concerned, a decades-long border dispute could escalate significantly. Thai authorities say Cambodian shelling killed several people at this petrol station in Sisaket. In neighboring Surin province, the Phnom Dong Rak hospital also came under fire.
I'm a little scared. I don't want war. I want it to end quickly. If Cambodia first started it and we retaliated, then it's okay. But I just want it to end as soon as possible.
Adding to tensions is a political crisis in Thailand, prompted by the suspension of Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra by the Constitutional Court over her handling of the border dispute. Relations between the Southeast Asian neighbors are at their lowest point in decades. Each has expelled the other's ambassador, and Thai troop convoys have been deployed to border regions where thousands of people are being evacuated from their homes.
The Royal Thai government is prepared to intensify our self-defense measures if Cambodia persists in its armed aggression and violations upon Thailand's sovereignty in accordance with international law and principles.
Thailand is tightening security at all crossings with Cambodia, but neighboring powers are intent on at least trying to keep alive the possibility of de-escalation.
The deserted road that runs along the long border between Cambodia and Thailand. The silence broken by the boom of a heavy gun. These villagers had decided not to evacuate. They didn't want to abandon their cattle, but they spent the night in a concrete bunker with sandbags for pillows.
I heard loud bangs since 8 a.m. this morning. I don't know which direction they came from, but I was too scared to go out, so I stayed in my bunker.
Through the night, Thailand had reinforced its lines. Heavy artillery opened up after dawn. This is more than a border clash. And the Thai military released footage of drone attacks. Targeted drops on Cambodian troops, they said, but they forced thousands of civilians to flee.
I was scared and then ran away from the bullets because the bullets were so strong. I was scared. I came here to be safe. I have small children.
In ancient times, it was our temple, but the Thais were greedy and wanted to encroach on our land and wanted our ancestral temple. They are wrong.
From the Cambodian side came Grad rockets, salvos fired indiscriminately across the border into Thailand. More than 130,000 Thais have now been displaced from their homes to live in evacuation centres like this. An adventure for the kids running around in their new campsite, but for the senior arrivals, a reminder that even the darkest times weren't this mad.
When the Khmer Rouge were fighting, they didn't come to this side. We could stay at home. This time it's so heavy we can't even stay at home. We were told to get in the car and leave.
Thailand's Prime Minister said today that if the heavy weapons that have forced these people out of their homes don't stop soon, this border clash could escalate into a full war. And that means these people may be here.
The negotiators pulled out of the ceasefire talks in Qatar.
That is right, Gordon. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff said Hamas, quote, clearly shows a lack of desire to reach an agreement. Israelis also issued an angry response to France's announcement that it will support a Palestinian state. Meanwhile, humanitarian aid piles up at Gaza's doorstep.
The United States is cutting short Gaza's ceasefire talks and bringing its negotiating team home from Qatar after what it calls a disappointing response from Hamas.
While the mediators have made a great effort, Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. We will now consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. It is a shame that Hamas has acted in this selfish way.
That announcement came just hours after French President Emmanuel Macron said France will recognize Palestine as a state.
French President Emmanuel Macron says his country will recognize a Palestinian state, the first by a major Western power. Macron said he will make the announcement at the United Nations General Assembly next September. 4 other European countries, including Norway, Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia, recognize a Palestinian state.
Said on Thursday that his country plans to recognize a Palestinian state in September. at the United Nations General Assembly. Macron published a letter sent to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, confirming France's intention to press ahead with recognition and work to convince other partners to follow suit. With the move, France would become the first major Western country to recognize a Palestinian state, potentially fueling a movement so far dominated by smaller nations generally more critical of Israel. Israel has been waging a devastating war in Gaza since the Palestinian militant group Hamas's deadly attack on the country on October 7, 2023. Israel maintains that recognizing a Palestinian state now would be equivalent to rewarding Hamas. Israeli officials have spent months lobbying Paris to prevent what some have called a nuclear bomb for bilateral ties, and news of Macron's decision on Thursday sparked anger in Israel, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the move, quote, rewards terror and risks creating another Iranian proxy. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said it played into Hamas's hands and was a, quote, slap in the face to the victims of October 7th. Macron had been leading towards recognizing a Palestinian state for months as part of a bid to keep the idea of a two-state solution alive, despite pressure not to do so. Now the announcement comes ahead of a UN ministerial meeting on the subject next week. The timing is aimed to give the French team a framework to work with other countries that are also considering recognizing a Palestinian state or have misgivings over doing so.
Officials are reacting strongly to what they're calling a blatant act of anti-Semitism in Spain, after more than 50 French Jewish teens were removed from a flight in Valencia after allegedly singing in Hebrew. And to push back against growing international criticism over humanitarian conditions in Gaza, Israel's military gave journalists a tour of the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom crossing, where officials showed aid totaling a week's worth of food for everyone in Gaza, all awaiting distribution by the UN.
The state of Israel doesn't limit the trucks of aid coming to Gaza Strip. The main issue or the main problem is the collection and distributing issue.
The colonel said Hamas is using hunger as a weapon in the court of public opinion, intentionally starving its people.
They sending people to interfere, and they are doing that in order to build a picture of a crisis, of a chaos, of a problem in the humanitarian aid. That's false. 4,500 trucks in the last 2 months entered Gaza Strip and distributed to the people.
We're looking at literally millions of meals that are sitting out here in this parking lot just inside the border fence of Gaza that could be feeding the people inside Gaza, but the United Nations doesn't want to distribute it because that would mean having to work together with the IDF to get the job done. And it makes you wonder if that means the United Nations would rather bash Israel than feed the hungry.
Cleveland suburb is mourning a police officer killed in an ambush. Officer Philip Wagner died in the hospital yesterday, a day after he was shot while eating lunch in his patrol car. Wagner's partner and another officer who tried to help his colleagues were also wounded.
Officers Philip Wagner and Peter Gale had just picked up pizza for lunch and were parked side by side along a dead-end road in Lorain, Ohio. According to police, the shooter was lying in wait.
To my understanding, there was one male who had a vehicle parked at the dead end behind me on Riverbend Drive. When the officers arrived, he opened fire with a high-powered rifle.
Officer Wagner, a Marine Corps veteran, was struck multiple times. The 35-year-old later died. 51-year-old Officer Gale was hit in the hand. Another officer, 47-year-old Brent Payne, responded to the shooting and was critically wounded. Investigators say the shooter, 28-year-old Michael Parker, was killed during the exchange of gunfire.
This was an ambush situation.
It's the latest in a growing trend of ambush attacks against police officers across the country this year. Data gathered by the CBS News Crime Unit shows at least 50 law enforcement officers have been shot in ambush attacks so far this year, on track to exceed the 2024 total. The numbers significantly spiked in 2023 when 138 officers were ambushed with gunfire.
It's not just those ambush attacks. The total number of officers shot in the line of duty has also been increasing. When you compare 2018 to last year to 2024, there's a 40% increase. And there was a peak in 2023 with 378 officers shot.
A summer day on the beach turns dangerous. They say St. Augustine Pier shut down after a lightning strike came down in the area, sending people running for safety.
No one died, but today's strike did affect 3 people that were injured, one of them airlifted in critical condition.
All of a sudden, I seen in the corner of my eye a big flash. And then like 2 seconds later, I hear this boom, and now my ears are ringing. I'm confused on what just happened. I'm over here scared, shocked, I don't even know.
And those on the sand and in the water say the strike sent people running for their cars.
I got scared. Everybody was scared.
We spoke with several surfers who were in the water when they saw the strike. They say they hope everyone is okay and that it shows just how quickly things can change.
It really brings me to Earth, too, perspective. Yeah, exactly. Like, we're out here just feeling nature, and then nature strikes. We're trying to take advantage of the life we live, and then it's
Imagine this, you're taking a nap in your beautiful house on a river, the sun is shining, and then out of nowhere, lightning zaps the ceiling right over your bed.
Climbing up the stairs to his bedroom, Paul Hollum took us on a tour of what's left of his ceiling. Actually, it looks pretty good now. This is what it looked like after that bolt of lightning came out of the blue. Mother Nature creating a massive skylight, sending parts of the ceiling and roof cascading all over him.
I didn't hear the bang that everybody else heard. I mean, I just immediately woke up when everything landed on me. I just started to move the stuff off the bed and climbed out of there and opened the door. And then I saw daylight.
This morning, flash floods inundating Ruidoso, New Mexico again. Another home washed away along the Rio Ruidoso River when monsoon rains fell on that burn scar from a fire in 2024, causing catastrophic mudslides. Streets disappearing under the raging floodwaters. Our poor town. Security footage capturing the river as the rain began to fall, the water growing quickly before overtaking the banks. It's the 3rd week in a row that scenes like this have played out in the small mountain town. Dozens of homes and campers have been destroyed. Oh no! And at least 3 people, including 2 children, have been killed. In the Midwest, the summer heat plus a cold front helping to fuel severe storms. Heavy rain and winds up to 60 miles per hour in the Chicago area, forcing a ground stop at O'Hare Airport.
Picking up what's left of his store after Typhoon Calme battered northern Philippines on Thursday night and tore apart what Ederson Conde says was his life's work. Yet he's grateful he made the decision to save his life over his livelihood.
When I saw that the wind was starting to tear the roof off, I decided I needed to run away.
Outside his store, the typhoon also toppled an entire row of concrete posts.
Typhoon Calme is the 3rd storm to form around the Philippines within days, but it is the only one to make landfall, with winds strong enough to inflict this kind of damage.
In towns further south where Calme's winds were barely felt, the rain worsened floods that have submerged communities for days after incessant downpours.
It's been really hard. There's nowhere to sit, nowhere to sleep properly. Everything's underwater, and we can't work.
But while many are temporarily displaced, Virginia Natividad watched her house get washed away by the raging flash floods. She sought shelter at the village hall just across the road, but she says it was no better.
It was scary in the village hall as well because the wind shattered the windows. Then it also got flooded because the roof was blown off.
In the remote corners of Kazakhstan, a spiritual revolution is quietly unfolding. The Uyghurs are a people group with ancient traditions and deep-rooted Islamic faith. Yet today, a small yet growing number of them are discovering a new spiritual path that's changing their world.
The Kazakhstan landscape stretches wide and wild, from sweeping grasslands to alpine valleys and towering snow-capped mountain ranges. Sitting in the heart of Central Asia, it's the world's largest landlocked country. Recently, CBN News took a 4-hour drive east from Almaty.
We are almost on the edge of Kazakhstan.
We're in the southeastern corner of the country, just a stone's throw from China, where generations of Uyghurs have lived. some still practicing ancient traditions like herding horses and sheep across the wide Kazakh steppe grassland.
We have about 25 Uyghur villages here, quite unreached with the gospel.
Rico, a Uyghur evangelist, was born and raised in the region. His family spent years in both Kazakhstan and China, reaching out to the Uyghur people with the message of Jesus. In recent years, the Uyghurs in China have faced severe persecution, including mass detentions, surveillance, and cultural repression by the Chinese government.
The Uyghurs have been Muslims for almost a millennia, so it's a mindset that's been ingrained into their mentality, lifestyle.
Though things have been changing, more and more Uyghurs are discovering Christianity, some through personal transformation, others through the influence of outreach in these rural villages. There are roughly about 300,000 Uyghurs who today live in this country. Roughly 300 of them belong to the small evangelical community. The majority of those folks live here in this remote part of eastern Kazakhstan. One of those believers is Gulnisa. She comes from a Muslim background and for 5 years struggled with chronic illness.
I was unwell and wouldn't leave my home for 5 years. I would read the Quran and pray Muslim ritual prayers and went to mullahs or those who used tarot cards but couldn't find any help.
But then Gulnisa says something changed.
Jesus himself came to me in a dream. I had something like a ball in my hand and the road was white and Jesus said it's ours. He smiled at me.
At first, Gulnisa didn't know who this Jesus was and she was determined to find out.
I looked for Jesus' images online and then I realized that he was like the man in my dream.
Now, Gulnisa is part of a small house church here in the village. It's led by Marat and Nurliskis, who moved here from Western Kazakhstan to share the gospel with the Uyghurs.
When we moved here for the first time, we lived in a barn, didn't have any money. We were sitting and crying about what we should do. We started to pray and we heard Jesus' voice. I will give you strength.
2 years later, about a dozen people now attend their weekly services.
My wife and I are praying that God will touch everyone among the Uyghur community here so that they would all hear the good news and spread God's word.
Another evangelist, Gulbakram, visits village after village in this area, sharing the gospel one door at a time.
I visit people's homes almost every day. God gives me faith and love to spread his message of grace. Sometimes people don't listen and aren't interested. Other times, they want me to share more about the gospel.
Australian-American Wally Kulikov gets very emotional when he sees firsthand how God is moving so powerfully amongst the Uyghur people groups here along Kazakhstan's eastern border with China.
When my parents prayed, my grandparents prayed, and who sees the result? Me. And I say, why, Lord? Why is it me? Why is it me, oh Lord, to be able to see answered prayer of my parents?
Kulikov's grandparents and parents spent decades in this region.
My mother was born there. My dad was 9 years old. They lived amongst the Uyghur people for a period of 30 years. They spoke their language. They understood their culture. They ate their food. They lived together with them.
They labored to share Christ's love despite immense challenges, often seen little fruit for their efforts.
You have no boundaries for the Holy Spirit. There is no boundary for what you can do.
Now, Kulikov walks the same soil. Having spent 25 years as a missionary here, he's seen firsthand how God is moving among the Uyghurs and other ethnic groups of Central Asia. He's humbled by the prayers and perseverance of his family, who planted seeds of faith they never saw bloom.
And 100 years later, for me to come back and to see the Uyghur people, I can rejoice in the fact that they are coming to know God slowly but methodically. And Jesus Christ appears to these people.
Kulikov, Rico, and other believers recently met at the Kazakh-China border to pray for the Lord's continued move across this region.